Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the History Cloak channel. I'm Mr. McGee. Now to start off with, let's go over a couple housekeeping items. Our long series has mainly been about Israel and its conflict with Hamas and understanding what's been going on in the region. Well, as you might have noticed from the news, things have kind of blown up. First of all, Israel has declared war on Hezbollah, which is the terrorist group to the north of Israel in the country of Lebanon. You've probably also seen in the news lately that Syria has collapsed, and so Bashar al-Assad, who was the dictator of Syria, he is now in Russia, and there's a bunch of various groups with ties to terrorism that are now in control of Syria. So what does that all mean for the Middle East? I have no earthly clue. So I want to pause the series until we can kind of figure out what's going to happen in that region, instead of just giving you some episodes and then all of a sudden those episodes are worthless because things have changed so fast. So let's pause that series until we see what happens after the new president, which is President Donald Trump, is sworn into office on January 20th. A lot of the foreign policy experts are looking to see what happens after the new leader of the free world is sworn in. So I want to pause, take a look at what's going to happen in that area of the world, and then I'll make a decision whether to continue with that series or not. Now, speaking of president-elects and inauguration days being January 20th, if you noticed, our last episode was a special episode on the Electoral College. Well, I figure, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple items. Today's episode is going to focus on the U.S. Census and how that affects the Electoral College. Then the next couple episodes will focus on how the U.S. government works, how is power shared, what are checks and balances in the U.S. government, and some of the basics of U.S. civics, which I think will be important for a lot of the teachers out there who are working with their kids, especially in lieu of the election. These may be some great episodes to help you out, as well as anybody else, even if you're not a teacher who just wants to know more about how is the U.S. government structured. So that's going to be the trajectory going forward for a little bit, and of course, as usual, I'll let you know if I make any changes. Now, in the last episode, we talked about the Electoral College, and we talked about how each state gets a certain number of electoral votes. Those votes are based on the number of representatives they have in the House of Representatives and their 2 senators. So we took a look at the electoral map and we saw that, California has 55 electoral votes. And we said that's because California has 53 members of the House of Representatives plus their 2 senators. Now, if you're thinking, yeah, Mr. McGee, you rehashed that in the last episode. It was brilliant. It was an amazing episode. Everything was wonderful. We cried tears of joy. Why are you repeating this again? Well, hold on a second. If you remember from some of the flashbacks where I showed you a bunch of electoral maps from previous years, you'll notice that the numbers have changed. So, how do states increase their number of electoral votes or decrease their number of electoral votes? Well, there's only one answer. The U.S. Census. Per Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, every 10 years, the government of the United States must count the citizens in the United States in order to establish which states get how many representatives in the House of Representatives. So let's say that your state has 20 members in the House of Representatives, but over the next 10 years, your state loses population. So in the next 10 years, when the census is taken, your state might go down to 18 members of the House of Representatives. And those 2 spots will be given to states whose populations have increased. There are 435 members of the House of Representatives, and that is a fixed number. So the change of one state gaining seats in the House of Representatives means that another state will lose members in the House of Representatives. The total number will always stay at 435. Now, you may be saying, all right, I get it. So a state increases in population, they gain members of the House, which will gain them more electoral votes. And if they decrease in population, well, then they lose members of the House, which means they get less electoral votes. But how does that really affect my life? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's this wonderful thing called 2020. That year is seared in the memories of every single person alive. Well, in 2020, you had COVID and you had the Black Lives Matter riots. And so different states approached those 2 problems different ways. Well, the result of that was you had many people leaving the deep blue states, which would be highly Democrat states, and moving to deep red states, which would be highly Republican states. Now, the next census is not until 2030, but different groups do projections based on the population changes throughout this decade. So right now, if population projections stay the way they are, and let's face it, many things can change between 2023 and 2030, but if they stay the same, this is what is expected to happen after the US Census in 2030. Now, if you've noticed the map, California, which is a highly Democrat state, is expected to lose 4 electoral votes. And Texas, which is a highly Republican state, is expected to gain 4 electoral votes. New York, which is a highly Democrat state, is expected to lose 3 electoral votes. Florida, which in the last 2 elections has become a very red Republican state, is expected to gain 3 electoral votes. You'll also notice that Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia are all expected to gain 1 electoral vote. All of those states, with the exception of Arizona, tend to be very Republican, consistently Republican states. Notice all the states that are projected to lose 1 electoral vote: Oregon, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Illinois. All of those are reliable Democrat states. Now, Pennsylvania did go to Donald Trump this election cycle and in 2016, but overall Pennsylvania tends to be a Democrat state. So that means overall the Democrats are expected to lose 13 almost guaranteed electoral votes, and the Republicans look like they're going to pick up 13 almost guaranteed electoral votes. Also, population-wise, by 2030, it's projected that 40% of Americans will live in the South. The South tends to be highly Republican. So, people are wondering if this shift will benefit the Republican Party, or if there will be a shift in terms of issues that might actually help the Democrats, even though they lose electoral votes. It's hard to tell because, think about it, 2032, we're 8 years out from that election and anything can happen. Again, refer to 2020. That changed everything and nobody expected that. But it's good to look at those shifts and think about what could happen and to understand why the US Census is so important to the Electoral College and the presidential elections. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. As per the usual, if you have any comments or questions, please leave them respectfully and politely in the description box below. I'm Mr. McGee. Take care.